Well, hello there again. We are coming out of a wonderful holiday weekend. Hopefully, everybody had a fantastic Christmas and was able to enjoy some time with their family and friends. Today's footage, we are looking at the rafters. So, this first picture is the test rafter that I cut up and then used as a template to start working on additional rafters. I would use the circular saw to do most of the cutting. As you can see here, you lay it on, then you draw it all out. And then you cut, and if you look at the end of that top board, you can kind of see the difference in the grain based on the direction the saw blade was going. So these are thicker than the circular saw can actually cut, so I had to cut one way, roll at 90 degrees, cut, continue that cut, roll at 90 degrees, continue that cut, and then be able to finish it off. Emily was awesome enough to help do the finish work because the circular saw cuts in a circle and we want a straight cut. So I would get everything prepped and ready, do the majority of those cuts, and then she would finish that last little bit and take out the wedges over here at the mobile table. um, The process took a couple of hours to get everything ready and done, and we knew we were fighting daylight, so that's why Emily came out and was helping get that done. As you can see here, if you look carefully in the on the second crossbeam there, I've already got one of the king posts, king post, yeah, I think that's the king post, set up, just testing. Like I said, I had to put that up to test and make sure I had the rafter measurements correct. So now I'm just marking the center point for the rest of the king posts so I can hurry and get those up because that actually makes setting the rafters in place much, much easier. Then we got to just bring everything over and put it all up and screw it into place. And then this will start looking like a home, trailer home, tiny home. There we go. That's what it's called. This has been quite the challenge, actually, to build. It's been fun to see the differences in what you have to do when it is actually a trailer versus a shed on slab. Um, it's been interesting to see the differences in my skill as that grows, as I continue to get better at the whole measuring and accurately cutting and things like that. That has improved as the quality of the lumber has improved because the bandsaw mills made a big difference in the speed and quality that I can get. Although I have to be super careful with the bandsaw mill because if I'm not paying attention and start pushing that blade past its sharp point, or if it starts to get gummed up with pitch and fibers, sawdust that get glued to it, whatever, then that blade has an awful lot of deflection ability and can wander up and down pretty bad. As long as you're paying attention, though, that it's pretty easy to address. But was kind of a interesting thing to discover. The Alaskan mill, the chainsaw mill, actually does kind of the same thing, but it's very, very apparent when that happens because it either pushes you've got the rail above the chainsaw bar, and so if it starts to dive down, you end up binding and can't move forward anymore because it's jamming that wedge in between the bar and the rail. If it starts to dive or to climb up, then you can notice that pretty good because you can't push the rail down against the lumber. So either way, you got an immediate, clear indication that you're your chain needs to be sharpened because it's pulling one way or the other. But the bandsaw, you don't really notice that until you're pretty much done with the cut and you go back and look at it and go, wow, that was wavy. So I don't know, I'm gonna, when we order some more blades at some point in the future, I might see if I can get some wider metal, some wider blades, because if the band is wider then it doesn't have the ability to turn as easily. I think that might help. I'll have to get our sharpener set up so we can make sure we have that ready to go, but I still have, I don't know, 16 brand new blades waiting to get put on, so I've got a while before I have to worry about sharpening blades. Hopefully by the time I need to sharpen blades I will have a place to actually set the sharpener up and just kind of let it sit and do its thing. But this is the challenging part, just getting them up into place. It went pretty smooth. Emily would kind of stand it up, and then all she had to do was lift it that first, foot or so, and then I can grab it and lift it the rest of the way, get it in place, and then throw a few structural screws into it, and then move the ladder, rinse and repeat. I mean, this stage of the process, things go up really, really quickly, especially when you're doing a timber frame or post and beam style, because you have fewer pieces to deal with than if you're doing the modern style of construction, which a lot of people call it traditional construction, which is kind of crazy because technically this would be considered traditional. The post and beam, the mortise and tenon, timber frame, they're all kind of the same thing. There's actually I've seen some debates in some of the forums about that, and some people get pretty touchy about whether you call it timber frame, mortise and tenon, post and beam, or pole barn, and they're all technically the same thing. However, they're all the same style of building. However, the difference is that if it's post and beam or pole barn style, then you don't do as much with joinery as far as cutting into the lumber to make mortise and tenons. If it's a mortise and tenon or timber frame structure, then it is actually, cutting mortises in some of the boards, tenons in other boards, and then you combine the two to create joints. Then you have a hole that's drilled through the mortise and a hole that's drilled through the tenon, and they're slightly offset. And then you have a peg, an oak peg, that you pound into that. As the peg goes in, it just pulls that joint together, locks it all together. As the lumber dries around the peg, it just locks it in place. As the lumber shrinks a little bit around that peg that doesn't want to shrink because it's already dry, it creates a pretty tight joint if you do it right. The challenge with mortise and tenon or timber frame is that a lot of places now require metal plates anyway, which then technically becomes a pole barn structure or a post and beam. Since you're not using that mortise and tenon to connect everything, you have to have a steel plate that secures all of the lumbers together, and I haven't put that steel plate in here yet. That'll be one of the things that we do before we finish and do insulation. Will be to lock those steel plates in to get there, to put those steel plates in to lock the joints. But that's on the list of things to do, because we need to get a plasma cutter, which is one of the things that I've wanted for a while, and we were evaluating the cost involved with having someone cut the plates for us versus doing it ourselves. And there's a company that we get our barn plans from. Barn Geek, which is a pretty good source of all kinds of information for building pole barns. And they actually have a source to make those plates, and they sell them. They're about $30 or $40 per plate, depending on the style. After shipping costs, though, that like almost triples the cost of ordering from them, because they're in Minnesota and we're not. We're in Washington. So shipping a bunch of heavy metal is fairly cost prohibitive. So we looked at even a local site, and just the cost of having a local fabrication shop do it was still somewhat prohibitive compared to buying the plasma cutter and being able to just cut those myself and then finish up, making them myself out of 1/4 inch thick steel plate. So that's the plan. And here's a picture of the process once we got done for tonight. The joints were all much better fitting than on the previous sheds, so that was definitely something to be proud of. Is just like I said earlier, just gaining and getting better, and working, doing it again and again, having more practice. Here's from the back side. And one of the challenges at this stage, we still had lots of rain to contend with, so covering the material on the floor was still a requirement up until we got the actual roof in place, which from this point, again, things went up pretty quick from here on. There was a little bit of unforeseen variance in the side of the structure, which kind of surprised me. But here's just a little bit different angle. I don't actually recall anymore what I was trying to specifically show in the difference, but there it is anyway. So thank you for watching. Hope everybody's staying safe and healthy out there, and God bless you and yours. We'll catch you on the next one.